Okay, so now typically I would read the speaker bio, but we're going to do something a little different this time.
First, let's start with the word black. In the 60s Black Power movement, we defined black as being culture, consciousness, and color. Culture because we have to identify for land mass and a unique way of looking at life. So we're African people. So the culture we identify with are the cultures that come out of Africa.
That you don't need money to win. You need a heart, you need a soul, you need to feel connected to the universe in order to win. And that's what winning is. And so we have misconstrued the meaning of winning. You know what I'm saying? And so I think the problem facing all of us. So when you say our community, I'm thinking of the global community. You know what I'm saying? Not only the black community, the white community, anyone. We just need to realize that the ultimate power is not money. You know, that the powers of being will always prevail over the powers that be.
Okay, let's take one big picture. Okay? Wait a minute. What did I do? I did something wrong. I messed up.
Creative Mornings Baltimore, please welcome Ernest Shaw to the stage.
Good morning. So in the traditions, is the mic on? Can you hear me? In the traditions from which I come, it is a protocol for me to ask if there are any individuals 65-ish or older that are in existence. Please raise your hand. So I have to ask permission before I proceed, before we continue with this this outing. So do I have your permission to proceed?
You have permission.
Yes, thank you. So it's a pleasure and an honor to be here to speak with you today about Crossroads. Are there any educators here? Yes, my people, right? So you know, if you're an educator, you know the way of lecturing to people is becoming passé. So my talks are interactive. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
I may even popcorn. Teachers know what popcorn is, right? And as someone who grew up really, really shy, I just want to tell you I can't stand popcorn. But anyway, so for those of you who know me or for those of you who are meeting me for the first time, what did you see? What do you know about me from watching that visual autobiography? Family focused, yes.
You're joyful.
Joyful, I appreciate that.
You love your community as well as your family.
I love my community as well as my family, yes.
Love music.
I love music, that's right.
You love your people.
I love my people.
Your murals are amazing.
Thank you.
Talent.
Talent?
You from the west side?
I am definitely from West Baltimore. And we know here Baltimore is separated east from west by the Great Wall of China. We know that, right? Okay. All right, let's get started. Does anyone here know what this is? An ankh, right? What can you tell me about an ankh? Symbol for eternal life, key to life, right? The coming together of the great principles of masculinity and femininity, not male, female per se, but the spiritual principles of masculinity and femininity to give birth to life, right? It is a crossroads. It is one of the earliest symbols that represents, in a way, a crossroads. Is anyone familiar with this symbol?
This is the Kinga.
I'm sorry?
The Kinga. It's a Congo.
Yes, it's from the Bakanga people. It is a cosmogram. Thank you very much. Yes. What can you tell me about the cosmogram?
It symbolizes life, rebirth, that it's the wheel of life.
I will accept that. Yes. Very much so, right? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come on as it is in heaven. Right. That, we know that, right? That has its origins, some of which began here, very similarly to these first two symbols. What is this symbol? Somebody said Celtic cross, right? To be specific. See how similar it is to the ankh and the cosmogram? Right. Okay, I'm building something here. What about this symbol? Veve, thank you. What can you tell us about the Veve?
The symbols that are drawn to open pathways.
Open pathways from where to where?
From there to here.
I appreciate that. From there to here, yes. Yes, from the spiritual into the physical, yes. Now I think I may have stumped someone. Anyone ever heard of witches, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, runes? Right, which rune is this? This is low-hanging fruit. It's the crossroads. Okay, so what is similar about all of these symbols? What can you tell me? They're all interconnected, right? Which tells us and lets us know we are all human and we are all interconnected, right? And we are, at this moment in time, at a crossroads as a species. And we don't have time to go very deep into that. But what I like to do is give face to the individuals that influence my work. And these are some of the individuals that have influenced my work. What is unique about these individuals is that they make their bones, I'll use that terminology, at Crossroads every day in the city of Baltimore. We call those crossroads what? Intersections. And we know some of the stereotypes and stigmatizations that are associated with some of these individuals. What do we say? By we, I'm using it loosely. What is said about the individuals that exist at these crossroads?
That they don't matter.
That they don't matter.
Because they shouldn't be there.
That they shouldn't be there. Disruptive, delinquent, public nuisances, right? They're dangerous. Take it deeper. Invisible. And when we do that, what are we doing? Dehumanizing them. Who said that? Yep. Gold star for today. We are dehumanizing them, right? Another individual. Many of them individuals use a tool called a what? Squeegee. Called the squeegee. And we know, for some of us, that choice of occupation, entrepreneurship, if I may, is somewhat antiquated. That hit me very hard one day. I was driving home real close to Hilton, and you know, if you're driving around Hilton Parkway, it was raining, it was getting dark, it was raining very heavy. And I saw an individual squeegeeing on the corner of North Avenue and Hilton Parkway. And that's when it hit me. It's not about it being an antiquated occupation or job or choice. It's much deeper than that. So I made the decision to do a series of work on those we call squeegee workers, right? Many of which are African descendant people. Not all, but many. Many of them, I'm a retired public school teacher now, so I feel more comfortable talking about the Baltimore City public school system. Many of them, I will argue, the system has failed them. The school system specifically, as a part of a smaller, much larger system and structure, has failed these individuals, right? Some of which I taught. So my approach to them and using them in my work is to show, exhibit, illustrate, communicate the humanity in the individuals that exist at these crossroads. And in many of the peoples that created these symbols similar to a crossroads, or that we associate crossroads with, many of those people, they have deities as part of their folklore and their mythology. Those deities that sit at a crossroads, they play a role. Now, through the lens of, let's say, a more Western perspective, we tend to see things in a binary. We're conditioned to see things from a binary perspective, and we develop what is called dichotomous thinking. So we automatically associate things with either good or, what's the other one? Evil, right? Good or evil. So if a thing is not of a certain deification, we automatically assume that it is evil. So we take some of those early mythical deities and we demonize them and we call them the devil. And they're not, it's a misappropriation or association. That leads to and has led to how we stereotype individuals that exist at the crossroads now. It's how we are conditioned to see these individuals who exist at this crossroads. What is important about this series of work that I'm creating is that the work is not simply about the humanity of the individuals at the crossroads, it's what those individuals provide us with. And they provide us with an opportunity to exhibit our humanity. That's what's important, is that they provide us with an opportunity to exhibit and illustrate what makes us human. And that's what many of those deities and some of those mythologies, on a much deeper level, that's what they're there for. You may see in some of my work and depictions of these individuals that exist at the crossroads, some traditional African iconography, symbolism, art, sculpture. That's because through my lived experiences, I gravitate toward many of the mystic systems, I'll use the word spiritual systems, that exist in Central South America, the Caribbean, and those in West and Central Africa. I'll say that. But it's also used as a means to help or assist, not tell, not dictate, but assist those who wish to reconnect, to use their genetic memory to reconnect to a time long before the transatlantic slave trade, or what we call the Great Mayafa. That squeegee is more than just a tool. It's more than just a public nuisance or an annoyance, right? Actually, the way I see it is that the squeegee is these young people's attempt at maintaining what semblance of their humanity they have left that this failed system has not stripped from them. It is much more than just plastic and rubber and fabric. They are holding on to that which makes them human and civil. Imagine the world we would live in if you take that squeegee away from them. And the squeegee is symbolic, just like the crook and flail, some call a heka and a nekaka. What happens if you take that away from them? Thank you.
So we do have some time for some Q&A. I have a microphone down here, and then Margarita has a microphone up top. So raise your hand. I got one to start down here. And then we'll kind of try to go back and forth, okay, Margarita? Okay, cool.
Hi. Thank you. Can you speak to sort of your color palette choices for a lot of your paintings? I tried to interpret some of your art through flowers this morning, and was really just drawn to the colors that you use in your work. So could you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I can. For a very long time, I was intimidated by color. Me too. I am one of those individuals who was blessed, and this is not necessarily rare as you might think, but I had a great uncle with a PhD in art, in visual art. And so he was a painter. So that's not always a good thing. Because those are really huge shoes to fill. And most of the people who knew him. He was also an educator and a professor at Coppin State University. So whenever someone would see me, they thought they thought I was his son. But he would go to my professors at Morgan State University and critique my work with my professors. And at the time, I would just draw. And he told my professors I was intimidated by color and to force me to engage with color. So Professor Guy Jones, Pat McGuire, even my art history professors, Dr. Arlene Sayhai, Mr. Tanab, y'all know Tanab, anyway, if you know Morgan, you know Dr. You know. But they really urged me to begin to work in color. And it was 1999. I was 31 years old when I graduated undergrad. So in 99, I painted my first mural, and my Professor Guy Jones came to assist me. And it was through my mural work that I really began to develop an affinity for color. As far as color choices, if you see the blue in the background, more often than not, if you see a blue blank wall in Baltimore, it's about to be on and popping. Right? Right? I'm coming through. But that blue, for me, it serves as a vehicle and a mechanism for healing. Right? I'm not going to go too deep into that, but it's very therapeutic, and I wish to offer that to the community as well.
Any questions up here?
Thank you so much for humanizing just the everydayness of Baltimore, Mr. Shaw.
Where are we? I'm sorry, where are we?
Up here. Sorry, I should stand.
Okay, I got you.
Thank you for humanizing the everydayness of Baltimore, especially, okay? We want to say thank you for that. But I want you to talk about music and how influential music has been in your journey to the brush and the palette.
Is that who I think it is?
Yes, it is.
So, a great question. We've had these conversations at what used to be Joe Squared, sitting at the bar, so that's my people, that's my people. Music, so again, coming from studying intently, trying my best to remember the history and culture of Africana people. You don't have visual art without music. You don't have visual art without theater, without dance, without community. So I can't paint without music. More often than not, it's music without lyrics. Not all the time, but most of the time. And more often than not, it's jazz music. But I also studied for over 20 years traditional West African drum and dance and culture. So coming from a family, I shared a bedroom with 2 siblings, 2 brothers, and an uncle. And my uncle was a musician. So in my bedroom, I had an organ, and this is the 70s. A huge amplifier to go with the organ, tambourines, bongos, claves, cowbells, maracas, not to mention my uncle's bandmates who would come spend the night. My parents would stay up all night. My father played drums and percussion. So I grew up in that environment. So for me, there's no separation between the aesthetics of visual art, the elements and principles of music, theater, dance. There's no separating. You can't have one without the other. So thank you for that question.
Our next question's down here.
Hi. So here's my question. I loved what you said regarding the young men with the squeegees. I've approached this actually the same way. I'm also a former Baltimore City public school teacher, and BSA alum. Hi, Ernest. So the argument that has gotten me, because I've been arguing this for years now with people in my community and in my home, the argument that now has been shutting me down, and I know that I don't feel that it is a legitimate argument, but I don't have an answer to it, is when people, and this is across racial lines, this also has been said to me by public officials here in Baltimore, that it's a danger to these young men. My argument has always been that the reason that people have issues with them is because they represent a poverty that people want to ignore when they come in and through the city. But when it's said, but they're putting their lives in danger by being there, I don't have a comeback for that. I don't have an argument or a pushback. What is it that you say when that is said to you?
That's a BSA alum question. Here's what I say, right? We often, again, we are we are conditioned to attempt to develop solutions to problems on the back end. We are conditioned to see things and respond or react instead of respond. So the way I see it, I don't necessarily see it as a danger if you approach them with a certain level of humanity and humanity. So now, let me be clear. My interactions with them have been all wonderful. But I also recognize I'm a black male from West Baltimore, and I've had over 20 years of experience in dealing with that demographic. So I have a certain skill set. So I'm not saying that what people need to do exactly what I do. I recognize everybody doesn't have that skill set. Having said that, what is dangerous It's the system that produces that. And if we don't address it on the front end, there will be, because you could make that argument not just about individuals who exist at the Crossroads, you could make that argument about multiple things that go on in many of the cities in the United States, right? It just so happens that again, I like using this, that's low-hanging fruit from a political standpoint, right? But the way I choose to look at it, I look at it from the front end. Let's get in these schools. If you're not a teacher or a teacher's aide or an administrator or a member of staff, that doesn't mean you don't play a role in the community in which that school exists. You know, so let's deal with the young people. I remember they used to have, I should not say this. Coming up, anybody that's above 50 or above, you remember Officer Friendly, right? We had an Officer Friendly program in elementary school. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm just saying. As an example, that program familiarized individuals who were members of the police force with other members of the community, and it created a slightly different culture. I don't believe we still have Officer Friendly, right? But that's a way to deal with situations on the front end, because that will also give the officer an opportunity to see and be, you know, I'm in favor of officers having to live in the neighborhood that they patrol, but that's a different thing. Just like firefighters. The same way firefighters have a firehouse in it, there should be, why am I doing this? But there should be a housing for police officers who police those neighborhoods, right? And that's not me picking on law enforcement. That's just an idea I had. So if it comes up, if Brandon Scott steals that idea, y'all know where he got it.
All right, to your left here. Left.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm an educator here, so that's going to be my angle. Can you share your teaching philosophy and maybe what you think the role of museums are? Museums, yeah, at this crossroads that we're in.
I'll keep this brief, right? As an educator, what was at the foundation of my educational philosophy is that this is very cliche. This is very cliche. Young people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And it's much deeper than simply that statement. When I enter that classroom, I'm entering that classroom first as a student. Teaching and learning and teaching is a two-way street. I have to first learn as much as I can about my students' data, qualitative and quantitative data. Regardless, well, even if I grew up in West Baltimore, and for 17 of the 22 years I taught in the neighborhood where I grew up, right? Within walking distance of my mama's house. I still had to take the time to learn and understand young people before I could begin to get into, like, that's the vital part of my pedagogy, before I can get into content. And if you don't do that, then with these young folk, as far as museums, there's this belief that museums are not as relevant if they don't have the actual artifacts and the physical, I'm gonna use the word artifacts or items in their possession. Because we know the debate. We know how these museums acquired many of their collections, and we know the philosophy around the acquiring of those collections before the museums were established. We all know as a part of the colonial project, right? But with the technology that we have, museums play a vital role, and they can exist while simultaneously returning some of those items back to the people that they were taken from. So I'm not advocating abolishing museums. We're not doing that, especially not now, right? But I do advocate restructuring, creating a new vision that extends the important educational legacy of museums while simultaneously honoring the people that have made, even voluntarily or involuntarily, contributions to those institutions. Thank you.
All right, we got a question right up front here.
Hi,
I'm a music educator, so really appreciate your lens on education. I have an observation and then a kind of two-part question. The observation is I see a lot of parallels in your work of kind of observing the ordinary and the humane and elevating it to high art. There's a lot of parallels to ethnomusicologists going in, recording folk music, and then composers using that as source material and creating symphonic works, larger works out of it. So there's a beautiful parallel with the music. I'm wondering, my question is, what is your interaction like with your subjects? So if it is a short interaction where you're stopping and saying, may I take your picture, and just having these little moments, what does that look like? How are you engaging with that person? If it's a long interaction, have you heard back from any of your subjects when they see their faces on walls and elevated and in these regal positions and with this glorious light shining on their skin? Like, have you been able to kind of follow through? So on the short end, how do you ask for permission to take somebody's image and not commodify them or objectify them? And then on the long end, have you gotten to see that glorious wraparound?
Beautiful question, right? Contrary to popular belief, I'm a very shy individual, right? I will probably not ever become a famous street photographer because you can't be shy and engage in street photography. And I paint from my photos, right? Having said that, I gravitate towards subjects that resonate with me first, right? So there has to be something about that individual that I connect with spiritually, because creating is a spiritual endeavor. So it's hardly ever a capitalist approach. I don't use the word, I'm not an entrepreneur myself, I'm not a hustler, though I may hustle, I'm not a hustler, right? That's relevant to your question, because if I'm going to engage someone who may be homeless, and then later on, I sell a painting for X amount of dollars, what is the exchange? You know, living in a capitalist society, though I do not consider myself a capitalist, I still have to navigate, negotiate, and deal with the spirit of a capitalist system, right? So more often than not, the engagement is long-term. It's not a, hey, let me get your picture. It's long-term. I have all of their names. I find out many of them don't have addresses, but I know where I can go and get in touch with them. And I compensate them very well for the 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes that I engage with them, right? Because again, the exchange, what we're doing is exchanging energy, right? And I have to account for that. What was the second part of your question? How do they respond? So if you look, so there's a mural on the corner of North and Asquith with individuals who are from that community, right? Those two individuals live in East Baltimore, not far from that mural. It's difficult. I don't want to speak for them, right? The best I can do is tell you how my daughter feels as a subject of my work, probably the most reproduced subject of my work. In murals. She's on multiple murals, literally on North Avenue, from going east to west. And let me go back, because I'm getting emotional, right? I don't chase money. I don't chase fame and success. I just want to connect and share my work with people. So for anyone who sees that, see if I can provide an opportunity for them to see themselves. 1508 to 1512, Michelangelo painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. On that ceiling, there's a depiction of God and Adam and Eve. Those images would travel the world and have an impact on our psyche. When we think of God, even if I know better, I think Jesus or God, I see a white man's face. Why can't I use that? Why can't I use that alchemy to uplift my people? So it's a blessing to just see their face and have interactions with them when they come and thank me for reproducing their image. And I apologize.
All right, we have another question up here in the balcony.
Hello. My question, excuse me. My question kind of builds on what, so I want to present it in such a way that respects that, and only if you're comfortable. Your work evokes for me, insofar as one could have a soul, it is immutable. So I wish to learn of what it is that could be your process in representing that which is inherently unrepresentable.
You want me to give up the ghost? Yeah, nah. Here's how I will approach that, right? Because it's a fair question. I'm not a person of dogma, right? I was raised Catholic, and we know Maryland and Baltimore. Maryland was the first or the only Catholic colony of the original 13 colonies. Now, there was Catholicism here because the Spanish and the French and other parts of what would become the United States. But as far as the 13 colonies, Maryland first and only Catholic colony. So being raised black and Catholic in Baltimore City, there's a level of spirituality in that process that allowed me to connect. It gave me the iconography, anybody here go to, you know, in you in Mass, you're gonna get up, it's aerobic, right? That's connected to your question in this way, because I'm trying to frame my spiritual process, because what you're asking me is what is my spiritual process? Not just, if you ask me what is my process relative to painting, you're asking me what is my spiritual process, which is very intimate and personal to me. So what I will offer is this. I'm not a person of dogma. I do not associate myself with any religion. I only wish to be human and connect with people relative to that. Now, I do study intently, especially many of traditional West African practices, right? And of course, Catholicism, Christianity, things like that. I've studied all of the world religions thanks to my HBCU education, right? Morgan State University. So it is a fair question. I appreciate the question, but there's certain aspects of that that are sacred that I cannot reveal. All right.
Creative Mornings, can you help me thank Ernest today?